Hope y'all are having a good night. Alright. I was waiting for everybody to join me. Hope y'all are having a good evening. Let me see if I can get Facebook pulled up. Today's been interesting. Interesting. Why is it still? There we go. Oh, Lord. Just waiting for everybody to come live with me. Eating my broccoli. My broccoli. I'm gonna get some more fluid in my system. How dry my hair is. I took a day off of streaming in the afternoon because I was taking a shower every day and washing my hair every day. I was stripping my hair. It sucks. But it's still kind of shiny. Need a few more minutes. See if everybody comes live with me or not. So I got this like vegetable tray. I'm noshing on right now. I learned a very valuable lesson today. Don't let nobody fuck with your shit. I'm ready when y'all are. I'll be honest. Today, I went back and reread that shit. That was really good. It was a really good chapter. If you missed last night's reading, oh my god, you have to go back and watch last night's 10 p.m. reading. Yeah, we bullshitted around a bunch, but yeah. It was good. Like, really good. So, yeah. I'm surprised that, like, my thing is not showing me. Oh, you know what? I know why. Because it's fucking up. Am I live right now? It says it's only 3 minutes. Hold up. My phone's been acting stupid as shit today. When isn't it, really? Come on, you bastard. No, well. Alright, good. Hello, George. How you doing, Troy-G Porgy Pudding Pie? I got my vegetable tray. I'm trying. Anyway. Alright, for those of you that didn't join me last night, you need to go back and rewatch that stuff. First 10 minutes of the show is you guys watching me eat and drink. As soon as I can get this thing out. Y'all ready for tonight? Hey, Stokes, how are you? Long time no see, bro. Where you been at? Been hiding in the shadows of the dark net. Good, that's good. I'm glad that you're doing great. I'm doing fantabulous. With my squeaky microphone thing. Hoping it doesn't fall. Got it rigged up to the ceiling. So yeah, you ready for tonight's reading? Last night was pretty hot. Stokes, you missed it. There were some really awesome sex scenes in this romance novel. Like, really awesome. I don't know. Yeah. Very different than the first one. Very different. Yeah, you're going to have to go back and watch last night's 10 p.m. It was hot. I'm telling you. It was nice. I'm always late. Wow. I might clip it. I might try to figure out how I can clip it, and then I'll share it, okay? Hey, Objection. How are you? Yeah, I might go back and clip last night's reading because... Oh, excuse me. I'm doing fantabulous. I hope you are. Because last night's was fucking hot as shit. This is the best romance novel I think I've read ever. And when I was young, I used to read a bunch of them. But this is based in like the here and now, and it's like super, super next level shit. So yeah, we just bypassed like the hottest scene so far. But we're almost to the end, so there'll be at least one more in there. The next one's gonna probably be even wilder. I'm waiting. I haven't read ahead. I was really wanting to read ahead last night, and I didn't. So, but yeah, y'all ready? Y'all ready for this? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start reading. If you guys are wondering what book we're reading, it's The Dark Highlander. This shirt is like all weird. It's I can't see it. Dark Highlander. It's from Karen Marie Moning. It's about a time-traveling Scotsman from the 16th century. And he comes to modern day, and then he takes her back in time, and then they fuck in a field. Shit's hot as fuck. He like takes her virginity in a field. He's this huge Scotsman, and she's this dainty little wee thing. Yeah, he's just like, you're gonna like what I'm about to do to you. But yeah. Anyway. So, on to the next. Sylvan wasn't a man given to lurking. Well, he hadn't been until his sons had gone and taken mates. Then it seemed he'd begun doing all sorts of things he'd not done before. while eavesdropping on an embarrassingly personal and sizzling conversation between Justin and Gwen that ended with Sylvan dragging Nellie off to bed and wed her a short time after. He grinned. A damn fine woman she was, too. Knew more about the Kelter than the Kelter knew themselves. In her 12 years as his housekeeper, she'd learned every secret in their castle, including one that he'd not even known. A secret place that had been forgotten for nearly 8 centuries. According to the last entry he'd read in the personal journal he'd found therein. She said that she discovered the underground chamber during a fit of spring cleaning a score of years ago. She'd not mentioned it because she thought he'd known, and besides, she added acerbically, that was when you weren't speaking to me. Sylvan snorted softly. What a fool he'd been, denying his desire for her. So many wasted years. Are you wasting yet more time, old man? A caustic inner voice inquired. Aren't there still things you refuse to say? He shoved that thought briskly away. Now was not the time to brood on himself. Now was the time to focus on finding a way to save his son. The contents of the chamber were the reason he currently lurked in the shadows of the great hall, awaiting Diagus' return. There were texts and artifacts, relics Diagus needed to see. The sheer volume of material in the underground chamber was overwhelming. It could take them weeks simply to catalog it all. Sylvan sensed his son before he entered the great hall and began to rise, but at the last moment before the door opened, he heard a soft rush of throaty female laughter. Then silence that could only be filled with kisses, then more laughter. Soft, faint, but Diagus' laughter. He went motionless in a half-crouch above the chair. How long since he had heard such a sound? Oh, the darkness was still there beneath it, but whatever had transpired this day had granted Diagus a merciful reprieve. He didn't need to see his son to know that his eyes would be, if not golden, at least lighter. When his son swung open the door, Sylvan slipped back into the chair, gathering the gloom around him with a few soft words. His news would keep till the morn. What up, Buttercup? How you doing, Daniel? We're on chapter 20. Chapter 20 of 27, so we're 7 chapters away from the end. And if y'all are wondering what she looks like, she's pretty hot. I don't know. She's got a really big, weird, creepy smile a little bit, but, it's just, it is what it is. Fine, and you? Fantabulous. Chapter 20. There's something that I haven't told you, Chloe lass, Diagus said, stepping forward from the shadowy circle of stones. His eyes said he wanted to tell her. His eyes said that he was afraid to tell her. What might such a man fear? That he feared it, and frightened her as well, and diminished her need to know substantially. For on novel chains her curiosity curled up and played dead. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, she prevaricated, wanting a dreamy pleasure of their newfound intimacy remain unspoiled by difficult truths. From the look on his face, difficult was a mild word for whatever he was withholding. The tendons in his strong neck worked, and he opened and closed his mouth several times. He took a deep breath. Mayhap ye should know. A sudden pounding at the door jarred Chloe instantly. Awake. For some reason my phone's acting really, really stupid. Her dream shattered into tiny particles of Sandman's dust. When she jerked, Diagus' arms tightened around her. Are ye awake in there? Nell was calling through the door. Sylvan's nigh beside himself with impatience. He's requesting ye both below stairs. We're awake, Nell, Diegus replied. Would you mind having a bath sent up? Diegus, your dad will have himself in a fankle. He's been waiting to show you what he's found since early yesterday morning. And you know how he's never been the most patient man. Diegus exhaled loudly. A quarter hour, Nell. Then we'll be down. I wouldn't be disturbing you if it were left to me. Soft laughed, and her footsteps faded down the corridor. Diegus rolled Chloe over on her side to face him, capturing one of her legs between his, cupping her full breasts possessively. Good morning, she said drowsily, flushing from the memory of what he'd done to her through the night. What she'd encouraged him, even begged him to do. She smiled. She was achy and sore and felt scrumptious. She had spent the entire night in his arms. Funny, she mused. Of all things that were so difficult to believe, the past 24 hours with him seemed the most astonishing. Since she'd given herself to him, he'd been a completely different man. Warm, sexy, playful. Oh, still every inch dominant. Basely sexual man, but infinitely more approachable. Where previously, sometimes it had seemed that he was there, but not quite there. Part of them somewhere else entirely. In bed, he was 100% there. 100% focused and involved. It was devastating to be the focal point of such raw, relentless eroticism. He was everything that she fantasized Diegus McKelter might be in bed and more. Wild and demanding, battering past all of her inhibitions. Just as she was thinking how nice it was to see him at ease, his body as relaxed as a lion lazily sunning himself. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. Oh, stop that! When you smile at me, I want all of it. What? He looked confused. Chloe slid her hands to his ribs, wondering if such a strong, disciplined man might be ticklish. He was, and it delighted her to discover that in some small way he was as helpless as a human as the rest of the world. She tickled him mercilessly until, laughing, he captured her hands in his. I punish wenches who tickle me, he purred. How? She asked breathlessly. He ducked his dark head and caught one nipple into her mouth, sucking gently before releasing it and dragging his tongue over her breasts to capture the other. You have perfect breasts, lass, he growled huskily. As to the punishing, I'll need to think on that. He purred against her skin. No one has ever tickled me before. Gee, I wonder why, she managed. When he circled a butted nipple in his tongue, her back arched and inhaled sharply. Her breasts felt swollen, chafed by his shadowed beard, and exquisitely sensitive. Could it be because you're always so reserved and in control? They were probably afraid to, she said, gasping. He released her nipple and looked up at her, startled. But you're not, are you, Chloe? Smile, she panted, not wanting to answer that. Not wanting to admit that some part of her was afraid of an intimidating man who danced between centuries. Not exactly of him, more afraid of the power that he had over her. Hey, Paul. Because she had such an intense feelings for him. With all the scorching, incredibly intimate things that he'd done to her, he'd not said any of those words lovers were wont to say. Words hinting at a future together. As he told her yesterday, he made no excuses and offered no pretty lies. No promises either. She wouldn't mind 1 or 2. Or 10. Would you mind carrying 160 pounds of hot water up the stairs? Mumbles. Well, fucking course I mind, you lily-ass man whore. What's with your lily-ass statements, Daniel? Oh, Lord. That's funny. Anyway. Or 10. Taking her cue from him, she kept her feelings silent, resolved to be patient, wait, and watch. Try to catch some of those subtle little signs that were all Diagus ever revealed. He arched a brow and smiled as she requested. Oh, that one was much better, she said, smiling back. It was impossible not to smile back when he truly smiled. When he slid his hands down her arms, over her breasts, and then to her hips, she shook her head wearily. I can't. Not now. She deliberately teased him with, It could be a week before I can again. She topped it with a demurring battle of her lashes. Growling, he tossed his head, his black mane spilling like dark silk over her skin. Oh, no, lass, I do not think so. A bath will hasten your recovery. He prodded her in the thigh, hard and ready. Did the man never tire? She wondered blissfully. Shit. Bring that over here. Despite her extreme soreness, desire flared, hot and greedy, stirring all those battered nerve endings to life. He'd made her feel insatiable. Having sex with him made a woman feel like she was going to do something forbidden somehow, and she could get downright obsessed with it. Though she felt bruised and tender, if they had the time, she'd be all over him. Or rather, he'd be all over her, for certainly he liked the dominant position. You heard Nell. We're not getting a bath. Sylvan wants us. Chloe felt a sudden flush of embarrassment. She'd slept with Sylvan's son in Sylvan's castle, though she hadn't felt awkward about it with Nell at the door. For some reason, she felt uneasy about it when she thought about Sylvan, perhaps because he was of her granddad's age. Don't worry, lass, he assured her, guessing at her thoughts from her expression. Sylvan saw us come in last eve. He'll not think less of you. Verily, he'll be delighted I had not had a lass in my chamber before. Really? She asked a bit breathlessly. When he nodded, Chloe smiled radiantly. At least here in his bedroom, she was the only one. Though not what she'd preferred, like a declaration of undying love or a request that she have his babies. It was something. Then her eyes narrowed. The sun was spilling in the window behind her, and Diagus's eyes were golden, dappled with darker flecks, smoky and sensual, fringed by thick dark lashes, but gold nonetheless. What is with your eyes? She exclaimed. Is it part of being a druid? What color are they? He asked warily. Gold. He flashed her another unguarded smile. It was like basking in the sun, she thought, tracing her fingers over his beard-shadowed jaw, smiling helplessly back. He prodded her again. You're good for me, lass. Now get off your back, woman, lest I start something you refuse to let me finish. He sat up, bringing her up with him, kissing her, nipping at her lower lip. The kiss turned heated and fierce while he was trying to stand, and they fell out of bed, so she landed on the floor atop him, and he promptly rolled her beneath him and kissed her until she was gasping for breath. He gave her a cocky smile, and a few moments later he helped her to her feet. I'll wager you won't be sore long, he purred. Definitely not, she thought. Damn, the teasing, torturing man. Muscles in the inner parts of her thighs that she had not known she had protested that she tried to walk. And still, she wanted more. Only much later did she realize that he hadn't answered her question. "'Tis nigh time," Sylvan grumbled when they entered the great hall. "Duh, where's the 5th book of Mannanon?" Digus asked without preamble. There is no fifth book of Monononon, Chloe There is no fifth book of Monononon, Chloe's matter-of-factly. There's only 3. Everyone knows that. Digus gave her a cool smirk. Ah, the nefarious everyone. I've long wondered who comprises that group. Sylvan looked amused, cocked his head, and glanced inquiringly at Digus. Think she needs a distraction? I thought you'd been distracting her quite thoroughly. Chloe blushed. 'Tis in the tower library, Sylvan added. But hurry back, we've much to discuss, and Nellie has shown me most amazing things. When Digus lopped out of the hall, Sylvan patted the seat beside him. Come, my dear, he said with a warm smile. Be a wee of me and tell me of yourself. How you meet my son? Well, she was never going to come up with a suitable answer for that. Chloe wondered wryly. She glanced away from his penetrating gaze, blushing a little bit. So, it's a nice castle. Avoidance. Deny everything. No, I was kidding. The truth, my dear, he said softly. Chloe glanced back at him, startled. Am I that transparent? He smiled reassuringly. Knowing my son as I do not believe 'twas an ordinary meeting. No, she agreed, with a gusty little sigh. We didn't exactly meet. It was more like we collided. Her story made him laugh aloud, and Sylvan couldn't wait to repeat it to Nellie, who would savor every word of the outrageous tale. The lass was a fine storyteller, melodramatic enough to keep things lively and exploit the good parts for all they were worth. Funny, too, with a self-effacing sense of humor that was most appealing. The lass had no idea how bonny and unusual she was. She considered herself a bit of a nerd after she'd defined the word. Sylvan decided a nerd was a fine thing to be. That he himself fell into the brainy, not particularly graceful, and a little bit awkward category might have influenced his opinion of a wee. Aye, telling the tale of there was a lovely bit of word-weaving, and the tale itself reeked of the fated meeting of the Celter and his mate. While she spoke, he deep listened. He sensed a pure heart in her, a heart like Digus's, more sensitive than most, wildly emotional, hence carefully guarded. He heard her love for his son in the slightest husky timbre of her voice, a love so strong that it fashed her a wee, and she was not yet ready to speak of it. That it was there was enough for Sylvan. His son had indeed found his mate. He pondered the irony of the timing, even as he blessed it. One thing gave him pause, however. She still didn't know what was wrong with Digus, and there was a newly blossomed bit of fear in her heart. He understood that well. When a heart realizes love was also, paradoxically, when a heart learned to fear most deeply. She wanted to know what was wrong with Digus, yet she didn't want to hear what that might spoil her joy. And Sylvan suspected she'd have a bit of battle with herself before finally getting around to asking. When Digus handed Chloe the 5th book of Monononon, the senior McKelter decided he was besotted with her. She handled the tome with utter reverence, touching naught but the barest tips of the edges of the thick pages, staring with huge, wondering eyes, and sputtering, But this isn't supposed to even exist, and oh God, it was written using the early Latin alphabet. Do you think I could trade one of my relics for this? She breathed, turning a gaze on Digus that Sylvan himself would have been hard-pressed to deny. Oh, aye, the lass could happily pass the hours, as he himself was wont to do, puzzling over the ancient texts, delighted in the stories therein. Nerd indeed. And Digus seemed fair frozen by the prospect of denying her aught. He rescued his son swiftly. I'm afraid it has to stay here, my dear. There are certain tombs that have never been made available to the world. Oh, but you must at least let me read it, she exclaimed. Sylvan assured her she could, then forced his attention on Diagus. The discovery of the chamber library had invigorated him, made him feel a score of years younger, and given him a whole new sense of what was meant to be a Kelter. And in that chamber, surely there were answers to his problems. He could scarce wait to show it to his son. Enjoying the moment, he had said with a studied nonchalance, I'm assuming I'm not the only one that was aware of the chamber library beneath this study. Diagus made a choking noise, and his startled gaze flew to Sylvan. Beneath the study? Aye. Diagus grabbed Chloe's hand, tugged her from the chair, fought a little battle with her as she tried to hang on to the text, plucked it from her hands and firmly deposited it on the table, then dragged her along as they hastened after Sylvan. I was reading that. When Sylvan applied pressure to the left brace beneath the mantle on the hearth, the entire side of the hearth swung out, revealing a passageway behind it. He explained how Nellie had one day, in a fit of energetic cleaning, stumbled upon it while sweeping cobwebs from beneath the mantle and scrubbing black soot from the stone face of the hearth. She grasped the brace while scrubbing, and the next thing she known, the fireplace was moving with her clinging to it. And why didn't you tell us? Diagus said incredulously. Sylvan snorted. She thought we knew, and believed she wasn't supposed to know. Diagus shook his head. And 'tis another library. Oh, son, it looks to be our entire history, undisturbed for centuries. Stunned, and she suspected a bit forgotten by the two Kelter men for the moment, Chloe followed Diagus and Sylvan into the dark void, down steep stone steps, into a cavern-like chamber that was roughly 15 feet across and twice that long. The chamber was lit by dozens of candles on wall sconces. It was lined from floor to ceiling with shelves dotted with tables, chairs, and trunks. Chloe's head whipped left, right, back and forth in a dizzying speed. Focus, Sanders. You're going to make yourself sick from excitement. No archaeologist entering a heretofore sealed and forgotten tomb could have felt any giddier. Her heart was racing, her palms sweaty, and she was not managing deep breaths very well. She strode forward, pushing past the two men, determined to see all she could before they remembered her, and perhaps they thought twice about letting her see it. She was in an ancient underground chamber, surrounded by her most favorite things, dusty relics from ages long past, relics that would send the scholars in her centuries into paroxysms of joy, giving them topics to gnaw and argue contentedly for the rest of their lives. There were stone tablets chiseled with Irish ogamic inscriptions, more stones with what looked like Pictish Ogham script, a script modern scholars had never succeeded in translating, as Picts had adopted Irish Oghams and hadn't been able to adapt it to their own language, since Pictic and Gaelic were phonetically incompatible. Maybe they could teach her how to read it, she thought, dizzied by the possibility. There were cloth-bound volumes, secured and tied in faded fabric, leather-bound volumes and scrolls, enameled plates, hand-stitched codices, bits of armor and weaponry, and heavens, even that long-forgotten flagon was a relic. After a few moments of breathless perusal, she glanced over her shoulder at Diagus and Sylvan, who paused just inside the chamber, their heads bent above a squat stone column on which they lay a sheet of gold. Duh. Is that what I think it is? Diagus's voice sounded strangled. Aye, 'tis the compact. As legend told, etched upon a sheet of pure gold. Well, that's not very sensible, Chloe pointed out faintly. It's too malleable. Pure gold is too soft, too easily damaged. That's why so many of the ancient torques had cores of iron beneath the gold. Well, that and to help deflect the potential sword. What compact, anyway? Precisely their purpose, Sylvan murmured, lightly tracing the edge of the gold sheet. 'Twas said they did it to symbolize how fragile the compact was, to underscore that it must be handled gently. What compact? Chloe asked again, stepping gingerly between a pile of leather-bound tombs and a heartbreakingly rusted shield, peering deeper into the shadowy corners of the chamber. She wondered if they let her live down here for a while. Another glance at Diagus made her recant the thought, unless he lived down there with her. The compact betwixt the Tuatha De Danann and man. Chloe sat down heavily on her bottom. Not on the tombs, Sylvan gasped. Chloe, startled, toppled sideways and sprawled on a dusty stone floor, appalled that she'd just planted her rump on a pile of priceless texts. Sorry. I'm just a little overexcited. How old is it supposed to be? What language is it in? Can you translate it? What does it say? Sylvan busied himself sorting through an urn of scrolls. Diagus shrugged. No idea what the language is in. You can't read it. Nay, Diagus muttered. Sylvan harumphed. Chloe's eyes narrowed, but she decided to leave it alone for the moment. She was feeling lightheaded again, and she didn't want to push it. She needed to slowly absorb her new perspective of history, one that included both druids with a power to manipulate time itself and the existence of an ancient civilization that had possessed knowledge and technology advanced far beyond anything man had ever achieved. Granda had been right. The Tuatha De Danann had once lived and was not just a myth. Breathe, Xanders, she told herself, dropping to her knees on the floor, reaching for the nearest tomb. Many hours later, Chloe rested her head back against the cool stone wall and closed her eyes, listening to Sylvan and Diagus talk. Languages that she couldn't translate, scribed in long unused alphabets, danced on the insides of her eyelids. There was dust in her hair, on her face, and in her nose. She was wearing a dust-covered medieval gown in a castle that had no showers or indoor plumbing, and she couldn't have been happier. Well, unless she had sent it back in time to the Alexandrian library right after Anthony had been giving Cleopatra and Pergamum library, bringing the estimated total of volumes housed therein to nearly 1 million, if anything historians claimed was to be trusted. So according to the journal you found, your ancestors rarely used this chamber, passing the knowledge of the... So, according to the journal you found, your ancestors rarely used this chamber, passing the knowledge of the place only from Lord to eldest son, Diagus was saying. His deep burr sent little shivers of sexual awareness through her. Oi, Sylvan repeated. I spent a bit of time paging through it yesterday. The most recent entry was made in 872. 'Tis my guess the lord died unexpectedly and was not, like as not, quite young, and chamber was forgotten. All this history, Diagus said, shaking his head. All this lore, and we never knew about it. Aye. Had we, things may have been very different. Mayhap some of us would have made different choices. Chloe opened her eyes a slit. There had been a strange, pointed note in Sylvan's voice when he made that last comment. She studied Diagus's chiseled profile, bronzed by the flickering candlelight, wondering what he wasn't telling her. She had not forgotten about the curse or his unceasing searching of the old tombs, though she had ample opportunity to ask him yesterday. She had not wanted anything to mar the wonder of their day together. Truth was, she didn't want anything to mar the wonder of this day either. She would zealously defend it from the merest hint of gloom. She never felt so bubbly, so elated, and she didn't want it to end. She, who was pushed inquisitively, who never took, I don't know, for an answer, abruptly had no desire to make even the smallest inquiry. Tomorrow, she promised herself. I'll ask him tomorrow. For now, between suddenly finding herself in the past, experiencing passion in such an intense man, and discovering so many treasures, she had enough to contend with. She was having a hard time trying to keep pace. Merely pondering the fact that she was on the 16th century was overwhelming enough. As if he felt her gaze on him, Diogenes turned his head suddenly and looked straight into her eyes. His nostrils flared and his eyes narrowed, his gaze hot and possessive. Duh. Chloe needs a bath, he said, without taking his gaze from her. He caught his lower lip with his teeth, and all the muscles in her lower body clenched. No. I'm a bit dusty myself, Sylvan agreed after a brief, awkward pause. I suspect we could all use a bit of a break and a bit to eat. Diogenes rose, seeming larger than usual in the confines of the low-ceilinged chamber. He held out his hand. Comblas, and Chloe went. Sometimes just to keep it, no matter how contrary it is. I have punishment for much as it tickle me, but won't even post it here in chat. You sort of remind me of an old teacher that I had. Objection! Objection! Mayhap it would place to sleep for 1,000 years that didn't burn down. Objection! What teacher was it? What class? Hold on, I'm gonna time out for a second. This heater is like killing me. We must chain him like that, Gwen asked, frowning. Oh, love, Tristan replied. He'll kill himself before he'll talk. I'm fool enough to give him the opportunity. They stepped back, staring through the bars of the dungeon where the lean man with close-cropped brown hair was chained to the wall, his arms and legs outspread. He snarled at them through the bars, but the sound was muffled by his gag. And you had to gag him. He was muttering something that sounded suspiciously like a chant before I did. Unless I'm questioning him, he stays gagged. Do not venture down here without me, Les. It just seems so barbaric, Tristan. What if he's not even involved in this? Tristan collected his assortment of personal possessions he would remove from the man's pockets before restraining him. He divested him of 2 lethally sharp daggers, a cell phone, a length of cord, large amount of cash, and a few pieces of hard candy. The man carried no wallet, no identification, no papers of any sort. He tucked the phone, cord, and candy in his pocket, palmed the blade, and wrapped an arm around Gwen's shoulders, guiding her away from the cell towards the stairs. He is. I caught him lurking outside the study doors. When he saw me, he looked as if he recognized me. Then he looked puzzled and finally shocked. I'm fair certain he thought I was Diogenes, and I don't know how Diogenes didn't know Dargis had a twin. Further, Dargis told me that Chloe told him her assailant had a tattoo on his neck. Though Dargis had no idea what kind of tattoo, it is entirely too coincidental that our intruder has a tattoo on his neck as well. Aye, he's involved. And though he's not talking, he will. He vowed with a grim determination. None of this makes any sense to me. Why would they want to hurt Dargis or Chloe? What could they possibly want? I dinna ken, Justin growled, but you may rest assured we'll be finding out. Chapter 21. It was stuffy in the chamber library as Dargis shifted restlessly in his chair, then dropped on the floor and leaned his back against the cool stone wall. He glanced at Chloe and smiled wryly. Her mere presence made it damned hard for him to concentrate on the work at hand. She was sitting cross-legged on a pile of cushions in the corner of the underground chamber, poring, as she had been for some time now, over the 4th book of Manananan. A few days ago, he'd swapped her for the 5th volume, so he might search the tomb himself, since he was slower translating than he. Much to her extreme and oft-voiced consternation, she was unable to read most of the lore in the chamber. Scribed in forgotten dialects using archaic alphabets compounded by grossly inconsistent spelling, the majority of them were impossible for her to decipher. His hot gaze raked her from head to toe, and he swallowed a little growl of ever-present desire. Dressed in a thin, clinging lilac gown, one of several Nell had altered for her, and he suspected Nellie was deliberately choosing ones to drive him to distraction. With a deeply scooped neckline, a snug bodice, she was a vision. Her tousled curls spilling about her face, and she was pinching her luscious lower lip, deep in thought. She got as lost as Da did in the old tales, becoming absorbed to the point of deafness. When she shifted position, curling on her side on the soft cushions, her breasts pushed together above the neckline of her gown, and lust quickened within him. Though he loved her upon waking, as he did each morn, he ached anew to bury his face in that lush valley, kiss and lick and nibble until she was panting and crying his name. The past 10 days had passed swiftly, far too swiftly for Dargis's tastes. He wanted to halt time, to elongate each day, stretch it to the length of a year, and cram a lifetime into the now. Suck it dry of the bittersweet joy of being mated. Sweet, because he had his woman. Bitter, because he had to stay his tongue and not make promises he burned to speak. Promises that were his to give because his future was uncertain. That weren't his to give. To his immense frustration, he couldn't offer what small truths he possessed either, because Chloe still hadn't asked him about the curse. He wanted to tell her. He needed to tell her. Needed to know that she knew what he was and could accept it. Thrice he tested the waters, once in her dream, once later, while strolling the gardens with her beneath the silvery half-moon. In her dream she flinched and evaded. In her waking she had done the same. Third time he'd begun speaking of it, she'd tugged his head down and used one of his tactics. tactics. She silenced him with a kiss and made him forget not only what he was about to say, but what century he was in. It wasn't like him to fail to confront the difficult situation, but he reluctantly ceded to her resistance and let it go for the time being. He had no doubt that eventually she would ask. Chloe was nothing if not tenaciously curious. He knew that he'd burdened her with a great many new things in a very short time. Time travel, druids, legendary races, new relics, the demands of his insatiable, lusty appetites. She'd proven remarkably resilient. If she needed a bit more time to work her way around the beginning to ask questions again, he certainly couldn't begrudge her the respite. So for the past 10 days, he'd focused instead on the sweet half of bittersweet, drawing succor from her sunny optimism and endless enthusiasm. Each day that passed, he grew ever more fascinated by her. He'd known she was intelligent, strong, and had a true heart, but it was the small things about her that truly enchanted him. The way her eyes went wide and excited whenever Selvin read a choice bit from one of the texts. The way she stood hovering above the compact for half an hour, hands curling but refusing to touch because she wouldn't risk marring the soft gold with so much as a fingerprint. The way she chased his young half-brothers around the hall in the evening after supper, pretending she was a wee fierce beastie, until they were shrieking with excitement and mock fear. The way she teased with cantankerous flirting with him in a winsome way, only until she succeeded in bringing a blush to his wrinkled cheeks and a smile to his lips, chasing some of the worry from his somber brown eyes. He was proud of the woman that she was, savagely possessive of her. She was fiercely glad that he'd been the one to awaken her to intimacy, that he was the one whom she'd entrusted a small part of her heart. Aye, he knew that he'd touched her heart. She was not a lass who could hide her feelings. Hello, Robert. She simply didn't possess such guards. Although she had not said the words, he could see it in her eyes, and feel it in her caress. No woman had ever touched him quite the way that she did. At times it seemed she was touching him with near reverence, as if she awed as he was. At times it seemed she was touching him with near reverence, as if she was as awed as he was, that they meshed so perfectly. Two interlocking pieces of wood carved from the same tree. She had no idea what it did to him to see her dressed in the colors of his clan, strolling through his childhood home. It made him feel all elementary warrior and lover, a man of fierce need and primitive laws. The only thing that could make it sweeter would be if he, too, could don the Celtic colors again. But that was a bearable loss. At the time when he'd expected little from life, she had given him everything, including a reawakening of the wonder and hope he had so long ago lost. The heathery fields seemed again fertile with beginning of life. Everywhere that he looked, he saw something of beauty. A wee pine marten questing the breeze, a golden eagle soaring overhead, tawny-crowned and majestic. Mayhap simply a stately oak he'd walked past 100 times, but not truly seen. The night sky, ablaze with stars, seemed again full of secrets and miracles. Chloe was a shaft of sunlight that had lanced through the storm clouds he'd been living beneath for so long, illumining this world. She had flung herself wholly and without reservation into their intimacy. She loved to touch, indeed. She seemed to crave it. She was constantly slipping her wee hand onto his, or burying them in his hair, grazing his scalp with her nails. Like a wild tomcat who had absolute freedom, but no known place to call home. He savored the gentle, constant consistency of the familiar touch to familiar hands. He'd been right in thinking that with her, love-making might yield some indefinable reason he'd not before experienced. Sex had always calmed and soothed him, easing his muscles, relaxing his mental tension, but now he felt sated. Holding Chloe close, his heart was also at ease. But if his present was a vast and sunny blue sky, his future was filled with the ominous roll of clashing thunderheads. And he dare not forget that. He dragged his gaze away from Chloe and inhaled deeply, forcing his thoughts back to less savory matters. In the past 10 days, though, he and Sylvan had discovered a wealth of long-forgotten information about their clan and the chamber library, and learned more about their purpose as druids than he had ever known. They still found no mention of the 13 and scant information concerning their benefactors. Sylvan was hoping they might find some way to contact the Tuatha in the old records, but Daigus didn't share his dad's optimism on that score. He wasn't convinced that the ancient race was still even about, and if they were, why would they even bother to appear at a Kelter who'd fallen from grace when they'd not bothered to appear to any other Kelter? He wouldn't be surprised to learn that they'd planted their traps in the in-between and gone away thousands of years ago, never to return. The search was taking way too long. In the 21st century, there had been a dearth of information. Now there was too much, and sifting through it was an epic undertaking. Thank you, Fiery Ocean. Welcome back. Glad to see you here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful Wednesday evening or day, whatever time it is, wherever you are. That wouldn't have fetched him, except he'd recently noticed something that had made him realize that time was critical. His eyes were no longer returning to gold, not even with their constant lovemaking. Nay, his eyes were now burnished copper and darkening further every day. Though he was using no magic, though he was tuping incessantly, though the ancient ones had not spoken again, the darkness inside him was changing anyway, in the same manner that wine inevitably soaked into and permeated the cask that held it. He could feel the 13 growing stronger, himself growing more comfortable with them. They'd been a part of him for so long that they were beginning to feel like another appendage. And why wouldn't he use an extra hand? Now, instead of catching himself only a few times a day about to use magic for something simple, and like filling a bath, he was catching himself a score of times or more. At least he was still catching himself. He knew that anon he wouldn't. And even yet more time, he wouldn't care. That fine line that he mustn't cross was getting increasingly difficult for him to see clearly. Rubbing his unshaven jaw, he wondered as if he might be possible to strike some kind of deal with the 13. Strike a deal with the devil, his honored hissed. Like what? They get to use your body part of the time? The devil cheats, you fool. Aye, there was that worry. And beings in him were not honorable, could not be trusted. The mere fact that he was considering to try to barter with them proved how critical time had become, and proved how desperate he was to find a way to secure some kind of future with Chloe. Sighing, he turned his attention back to the text. Now, more than ever, it was imperative he exercise the utmost discipline. Though he preferred to sweep Chloe into his arms, carry her to the chamber and show her more of his world, live only in the moment, he knew he had to revert to the schedule he'd kept in Manhattan. Work from dawn till dusk, love Chloe only in the night, and work again while she slumbered. He had an eye on much more than a few moons with his mate. He was determined that he would have his full measure of life with her. When she got up and slipped from the chamber, when she got up and slipped from the chamber, he kept his gaze firmly fixed on the tombs in his lap. Sounds like somebody else, doesn't it? Chloe strolled blissfully through the gardens, marveling that already a week and a half had sped by. They'd been the finest days of her life. Her time had been divided primarily between exploring the contents of the chamber library and exploring the newfound pleasure of passion. The explosive heat between her and Diagus was evidently palpable enough that on several occasions Sylvan had ordered them to leave the chamber library, telling them dryly, to go, walk away, or some such activity. The two of you are like a pair of tea kettles, steaming up my tombs. The first time that he had said such a thing, Chloe had blushed furiously. But then Diagus had given her what she'd come to think of as the look, and she'd swiftly forgotten her embarrassment. He had a way of canting his head low and looking up at her. His dark gaze heated to intense and never failed to make her weak-kneed with desire, thinking about all the things that he was going to do to her. Because she was unable to read a lot of the stuff in the chamber, she was insatiably curious about the 16th century. While the men had worked, she'd stolen away frequently. She thoroughly explored the castle, leaving no parts untouched. The buttery, the larders, the kitchens, the chapel, the armory, the garderobes, though scrumptiously cleaned daily, those could have done without. Even Sylvan's Tower Library, where she was grateful to discover that she could translate some of the more recent works. The elderly man had copies of every philosophical, ethical, mathematical, and cosmological hours from Diagus. She had gotten to know Nell and had met his young half-brothers, Ian and Robert. Precious, dark-haired, 2.5-year-old boys with some sunny dispositions. She could hardly look at them without thinking what beautiful babies Diagus would make. She ready to have them babies. She ready. I didn't think she had that kind of distance in her. It was 10 feet. What? Hold on. Control your lust. I turn around for 10 minutes and you have her squirting on 2,000-year-old time. I'm going to stop reading your comments. It's official. Anyway. She did sit on. Anyway. And that she'd like to be the one that he made them with. A delicious little shiver raced over her skin at the thought of making a family with him, building a future. For the past 10 days, she'd watched him carefully and had concluded that this is definitely... Okay, let me pause for a second. 10 days. And she's already talking about having babies with this mug. Okay? 10 days. Lots of sex. Gave him her virginity. Met his family. And, it's talking about, the future and everything. This is women. Okay? This definition right here is women. Whether they state it or not, within the first few days, 10 days, but she's already pregnant because other book. Yep. She probably is because she keeps fainting. She's probably malnourished or something. There we go. And I'm back. I've seen it go out on the Facebook first. It always kind of gives me a little bit of a 30-second warning. So, sorry. Hello, Danielson. Yeah, usually if my internet goes out, it takes like maybe a minute and then I'll come back. Maybe two if it's pushing it. Oh, it's only been an hour. I'm almost done. Right there. I'm so almost done. This isn't even like the whole thing because there's like a chunk of book back here that doesn't even exist. Doesn't count. Yeah, this is like little pieces of the new books. Fever series. Yeah, so here. That's how much is left. Maybe we'll get done with it tonight. I don't know how much I read already. We're gonna get so close. So close. Get so far. I forgot where I was, damn it. That sped by, they'd find a save her life. Yep. Her time had been divided primarily between exploring the chambers and when they found pressure of passion, telling dryly, go walk away, dark gaze, heated intense, because you're unable to leave all the stuff in the chamber. Thoroughly explored the castle, cleaning, kitchens, channel, garros. Elderly man. Nope, wait. The elderly man had copies of every philosophical, ethical, mathematical, and cosmological treatise. Also, during those hours, she got to know Nell, hardly look at them without thinking of the beautiful babies they make. And then she was one with them, delicious shiver, building a future. For the past 10 days, she watched him carefully and had concluded that he had definitely cared about her. He treated her the same way Justin treated Gwen that day at Maggie's castle, anticipating her desires, slipping from the chamber library to fetch her a cup of tea, a snack, or damp cloth to wipe dust from her cheek, disappearing into the gardens and returning with an armful of fresh flowers, leading her to bed and covering her naked body with them, lazily, tenderly bathing her in the evenings before a peat fire, helping her plait her hair like Nell's. She felt treasured, cosseted, and though he didn't say it, loved. She realized while watching him and reflecting upon all that she knew of him, that Diagus McKelter would probably never speak of love, unless someone spoke to him about it first. Gwen had essentially told her that much back in the Stones. Diaguses don't look for love from a woman because he's never been given any reason to. Well, Chloe Sanders was going to give him a reason to, tonight, over a romantic dinner in their bedchamber, and she was already filled with urns of fresh-cut heather and dozens of oil globes that she'd pilfered from other rooms in the castle. She'd set the scene, embellishing it with romantic touches. Nell had arranged the menu, and all that she had to do was speak her heart. And if he doesn't say it back, a niggling little doubt tried to surface. She thrust it firmly away. He would entertain no doubts and no fears. Imagine loving in silence for so long. Sheesh. She wasn't going to be able to wait 12 more hours. When Chloe had been a teenager, not knowing anything about kissing, she practiced on a pillow, feeling it inordinately silly, and how else was a girl supposed to get a feel for it? She read books, avidly watched movies to see how lips met and where noses went, and it wasn't the same as actually trying to press her lips to something. Personally, she harbored the firm conviction that there wasn't a person alive anywhere in the world that hadn't practiced kissing on something. A mirror, a pillow, back of her hand. Since her first kiss had been reasonably successful, she decided that practicing saying "I love you" wasn't a completely idiotic idea, as there wasn't exactly a plethora of mirrors around the castle. When she left the garden, strolled into the great hall, and spied a shiny shield hanging on the wall near the hearth. She yielded to impulse, dragging a chair over to it, hopped up, and peered at her own reflection. She wanted a moment tonight to be just right. She didn't want to stutter or stammer around. "I love you," she told the shield softly, and hadn't come out quite right. It was a good thing that she decided to practice. So she wet her lips again and said it again. "I love you," she said tenderly. "I love you," she said firmly. "I love you," she said in a sexy voice. Reflecting a moment, she decided it was probably better that she just speak normally. She didn't do throaty very well. Saying it felt good, she thought, staring at her reflection. She'd been holding it so tightly inside of her that she had begun to feel a pressure cooker about to blow her lid off. She'd never been able to keep her feelings to herself. It wasn't part of her makeup, any more than casual sex was. She smiled radiantly at the shield, pretending it was Diagus. And 3 simple words just didn't seem like it was enough. Love was so much larger than words. "I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you more than chocolate. I love you more than the whole world is big." She paused, thinking, searching for a way to explain how she felt. "I love you more than artifacts. I love you so much that it makes my toes curl just thinking about it." Pushing her hair back from her face, she donned her most sincere expression. "I love you." Danielson, wax on, wax off, nips be polished, fine and like mirror like. Who this? Sup, Danny? How you doing, bro? Good, I'm live. Goodbye. Let's see. God bless America. What is up with the internet tonight? Work. Mother trucker. There, that's working. So it's not the shield. I wasn't really talking to the shield. I couldn't find a mirror, and it's just a little positive reinforcement thingy I do sometimes. I read it in books somewhere, and it boosts self-confidence and engendered a general sense of well-being, and it really does work. You should try it sometime, she thought brightly. She realized she was talking with her hands, gesturing a bit wildly, so she clasped them firmly behind her back. He remained silent behind her, stressing her out completely, and she began babbling again. "What am I saying? I don't really want the shield. I mean, I think you've given me more than enough artifacts already, and I couldn't ask for anything else, so if you'll just go away now, I'll resume my exercises. It's important that one does them alone." More silence. What on earth was he thinking? Was he going to burst into laughter? Was he smiling? She peered into the shield, but since she was up on the chair, he was several feet lower than she was, and she couldn't see him. Daigus, she said wearily, refusing to turn. If she looked at him now, she might start crying. She so wanted the moment tonight to be tender and romantic, and damn it all, now if she said it to him tonight, he'd know she'd been practicing and he'd think she was a total dweeb. "Oi, Les," he said finally, slowly. "Why aren't you going away?" she asked tightly. A long pause, then a cautious, "If you do not mind, Les, I'd like to watch." She closed her eyes. Was he making fun of her? Absolutely not. "With all the things we've done together, there's something you wouldn't let me watch? I think it is a bit late to be getting off this little self-conscious around me," he said. She didn't decide if he was picking up a hint of lazy amusement of voice or not. "Go away," she gritted. He didn't. She could feel him standing there. His regard and intense pressure on the back of her skull. "Chloe Les," he said then softly, tenderly. "Turn around, sweet." He knew, she thought, absolutely mortified. Nobody would fall for that pathetic excuse that she just made up. But this wasn't the moment she picked. She had it all planned out, and he was ruining it for her. "Chloe," he repeated softly. Oh, something in her suddenly simply snapped, and she spun about to face him. Plunking her fists at her waist, she shouted, "I love you, okay? But I didn't want to say it that way. I wanted to say it just right, and you ruined it." Scowling, leaping from the chair, and stormed from the hall. Pouty brat mode, right? That would be me. If I had something planned out and I was like super excited and it was all going to be like really romantic and stuff, and he walks in, damn it. Anyway. So yeah. Hello again. Chapter 22. We're just shrugging along, aren't we? Daigus stood motionless in the great hall. That had been singularly the most unforgettable moment of his life. When he was his Da's age, in the event that he had the luxury of living that long, he had no doubt that he'd still be replaying the vision of Chloe perched on that chair before the shield, practicing how to say that she loved him just right. At first, when he'd but come above stairs to fetch fresh candles for the chamber library, and he'd walked into the great hall, what she'd been doing hadn't made any sense to him. He genuinely thought that she was gushing over the artifact. He teased her, and only then he noticed the tension and misery emanating from her. She'd begun to babble, which was always a dead giveaway that she was upset. When she'd given him her absurd spiel about positive reinforcement or some other such nonsense, he realized that what she had really been doing, practicing of how to tell him that she loved him. How utterly adorable she was. She loved him. She said it. Of course, she'd shouted it at him. But a man could deal with that when a woman loved him more than the whole world was big. He laughed exultantly, turned sharply on his heel, and hurried off to catch her, and to tell her that, since he was bigger, he was fair certain he loved her more. Get it? You can't possibly love me more. You're not big enough. There's not enough love in that body to love me more than I. But it didn't work out quite that way, for he didn't catch her until she was almost to the bedchamber. And then when he caught her, grasping at the billowing skirt of her gown, he tugged harder than he meant to, and the thin, silky fabric ripped clear up the back, and she had nothing on beneath it. Only those lusciously shaped legs and round curves of her beautiful behind. The fabric ripped clean to her nape, and his thoughts turned instantly primitive and wild. She glanced back at him, looking shocked, and though he suspected that he would assure her that he hadn't meant to do that, he couldn't seem to manage a word. Her declaration of love, coupled with all that naked, rosy skin, had rendered him witless. Growling low in his throat, he scooped her into his arms and planted his mouth firmly over hers. She was stiff at first, but in a few moments she was kissing him back passionately. You didn't have to rip my dress," she said plaintively, when she let her breath. "I love this one. Nellie worked on it for days." "I'm sorry, lass," he said somberly. "'Twas an accident, lass. Sometimes I forget my strength. I mean to be gentle, but it didn't come out that way. Can you forgive me?" She sighed, but nodded and kissed him again, locking her arms around his neck, and he carried her toward the door of the bedchamber. "You have, without a doubt, Chloe, the most lovely behind I have ever seen," he purred, shifting her in his arms, laying his big palm over her twin curves of it. "Oh," she squirmed in his arm. "I tell you I love you, and that's what you say?" That would be me. That would be me. He silenced her with another kiss and kicked open the bedchamber door. "And I'd love you, even if you didn't," he said softly. She melted in his arms. "And I think that no man has ever been told he was loved in such a memorable fashion. Wait. And I think that no man has ever been told he was loved so much in a memorable fashion, and I shall always treasure the memory." She smiled beatifically. "Really? You don't think that I'm the biggest geek in the world?" He tossed her onto the bed and slipped a dirk from his boot. "I think," he said silkily, as he gripped the bodice of her ruined gown in his hand and slid it down the front, laying the gown neatly in two halves, "that you are perfect exactly as you are, and I wouldn't change one thing about you." He tossed the torn dress from the bed and tugged his shirt over his head. She watched him with wide eyes, then laughed. "Nellie is really going to wonder what happened to my dress. I'm fair certain Nellie will never ask. I've seen a gown or two of hers in the rag heap." "Really?" Chloe blinked, pondering Sylvan in a new light. He was a handsome man, and it was from his genes that Diagus and Driston had come. Behind his scholarly mien, she suddenly realized, Sylvan McKelter probably concealed a lot of things. "Aye, truly. You have too many clothes on," Chloe complained breathlessly a few moments later. He offered her his dirk to cut them off, but she took one look at those snug leather trousers and decided that there was no way that she was letting a sharp blade get near that. She knew what was inside of them. So she borrowed another from his delicious tactics and undressed him mostly with her mouth. Chloe was deliriously content. Curled with her backside to Diagus's front, his strong arms wrapped around her, she was blissfully sated. He loved her. He not only told her, he'd shown her with his body. It was there in that way that he stroked her cheek or brushed her curls from her eyes. It was there in his long, slow kisses. It was there in the way that he held her in the aftermath. With that resolve, she was impatient to lay all her concerns to rest. With such love between them, she knew that she could face anything together. She squirmed in his embrace, slipping around in his arms to face him. He smiled at her, one of those lazy, melting smiles he gave so rarely, and kissed her. Sighing with pleasure, and before he could distract her again, she drew her head back, breaking the kiss. Daigus, I'm ready to know now about the curse. Tell me what it is, and tell me what you're looking for. He kissed her again, lazily sucking on her lower lip. Please, I need to know. He smiled faintly, then sighed. I cannot. I've waited to tell you, but it seems like you needed a bit more time. I did. So many things happening so quickly that I felt like I needed to catch my breath or something, but I'm ready now, she assured him. He stared at her a long moment, his eyes narrowed. Lass, he said softly, if you tried to leave me, I fear I wouldn't let you. I fear I would do whatever I had to, no matter how ruthless, to keep you. I considered myself warned, she said pertly. Trust me, I'm not going anywhere. Now tell me. He held her gaze a bit longer, silently assessing her. Then capturing her hands in his, he entwined their fingers together and began. So let me get this straight, Chloe wide-eyed, clarifying some time later. You used the stones to go back in time and... Oh, that's what that quote is in the mid-codex meant about the man who takes the bridge that cheats death. The bridge is the brown dracade, the white bridge, because you can take it backward in time and into a person's death, undo a person's death. That quote was about you. Aye, lass. So you saved Dristan's life, but because you broke a sacred oath that you'd sworn to the Tuatha Dé, that ended up setting an ancient evil free? He wadded. He nodded wearily. Well, where is this ancient evil? She asked, bewildered. Are you chasing it through the centuries or something? He made a sound of dry, dark amusement. Something like that, he muttered. Well? She prodded. Rather 'tis chasing me. I don't understand. Why don't you just leave it for now, Chloe? You know enough to help us search. If, while reading, you find aught about the Tuatha Dé or the Dragar, bring it to Meyer Sylvan's attention. Where is this ancient evil, Daigus? She repeated evenly. When he tried to turn his face away, she cupped it in her hands and refused to let him look away. Tell me. You promised to tell me it all. Now tell me where the damn thing is, and more important, how do we destroy it? Dark gaze boring into hers, he wet his lips and said softly, 'Tis inside me. It's so sad. Chapter 23. We're catching up speed now. Yes. Chloe delicately turned a thick vellum page of the tomb on her lap, though she was not really reading it, too lost in thought. 'Tis inside me, he said. So many things finally made sense to her. Bits and pieces slid neatly into place, giving her her first real glimpse of the whole man. He told her everything that night, several days ago, as they lay in bed, faces close, fingers laced, about Dristan and Gwen. No wonder Gwen had been trying to brace her. And how about Justin had been enchanted and put in the tower? He told her how he'd immersed himself working on Justin's future home, and now she knew why he sounded so proud of the castle. And about the fire in which Justin had died. He told her about the night he wearied himself, then gone into the stones and broken his oath. He told her that he'd not truly believed in the old ancient legends until the evil had descended upon him in the in-between, and it had been too late. He told her what the use of magic did to him, and how making love helped him. How he'd gone through the stones to the future to make certain Justin had indeed been reunited with Gwen, needing to know what his sacrifice hadn't been for naught, and how he'd stayed unwillingly to face his clan as he, hoping to find a way to save himself. He told her he'd not worn the plaid of the Celter since, though he'd not mentioned the scrap that she'd found beneath his pillow, so she did not bring that up either. She knew what it meant. She could picture him lying alone in his bed in his museum of a penthouse, in a world that must have seemed so strange to him, staring at it. It symbolized all his hopes, that worn piece of cloth. She thought him an idle womanizer when she'd met him, this man who's so much more than that. Now she understood the sensation that she'd been on several occasions of an ancient evil presence. It had always been when Diagus was recently used magic. She understood how he breached some impenetrable security systems with a bit of supernatural help. She understood the quixotic nature of his eyes, they darkened as he darkened. She had an entirely new appreciation for his discipline and control. She suspected that she'd only glimpsed the tip of the iceberg, and couldn't begin to fathom the battle that he was waging every waking moment. Although he condemned himself for carrying such evil within him, for having freed it to begin with, Chloe couldn't quite see it that way. Diagus had done what he'd done out of love for his brother. Shouldn't he have cheated death in such a fashion? Maybe not. It did seem to go against the natural order of things. Still, if the power to do so existed, well, that not then part of the natural order of things. It was an ethically explosive issue, not because of the act itself, but because of the potential for a man to abuse such power to cheat at every turn. Yet Diagus hadn't cheated again. Since he'd broken the oath, he'd become the repository for absolute power, and not once abused it. Instead, he devoted every moment of his existence trying to find a way to lay that power to rest. What was his actual transgression? Loving so much that he'd risked it all? And heaven help her. She loved him all the more for it. Are you supposed to take the outside off of these things? That was weird. Surely his intent mitigated his actions to some extent. Even in a man's court of law, punishment for a crime that was meted out in degrees of respect of intent. It wasn't as if any of you asked for such power, she said irritably. Sylvan and Diagus both glanced up from their texts. Since Diagus had confessed everything 2 nights ago, they'd spent nearly every waking moment in the dusty chamber, determining to find answers. Well, you didn't. She had been quietly fuming about it for days, and like every other emotion she felt, she could only hold on to it for so long. Hey, Monster Jam! How are you? Verily, my dear, I do not think men should possess the power of the stones, Sylvan said softly. I cannot tell you how many times I've wanted to topple them. To destroy the tablets and the formulas. So then do it. Diagus said intensely. After we've gone again? Do it, Doc. Did you have a good day at school? No, you didn't go to school. Never mind. I have to remember. It would be outright defiance of them, Sylvan pointed out. And what if the world should have the right to either prosper or destroy itself by itself, Diagus said quietly. I agree with Diagus, Chloe said, reaching for her cup of cooling tea. I don't think man should have the power. He's not capable of understanding and discover himself. You can't help but think, but by the time we're evolved enough to fathom how to manipulate time, we'd be wise enough not to do it. Besides, who can really say that with any of the times that the stones were used, the outcome was better? Diagus had explained to her that only conditions under which they were permitted to use the stones were their line in danger of extinction, or were the world in great peril. He told her of the few occasions that they opened a gate through time, once to relocate sacred powerful objects belonging to the Templars, in order to whisk them from the grasp of the power-hungry king who destroyed their order. Yet, who could say that, had man been left to his own devices, he wouldn't have found another way that would have served as well? Diagus met her gaze, and they shared a long, intimate look. There was such heat in his eyes that she felt it like a sultry caress against her skin. I do not ken how this may end, Chloe, he said to her that night. When it ends, she replied firmly, it will end with me at your side, and we will have freed you. I love you, he mouthed to her across the chamber. Chloe smiled radiantly. She knew that. Knew it more completely than she ever thought a woman could know, since discovering that his curse truly was. She not wavered in her feelings for him, not even for a moment. What was inside him was not him, and she refused to believe it ever would be. A man who could withstand such a thing for so long was a man so good to the very core. I love you too, she shaped the words soundlessly. Elephant shoes. Say it slowly. They fell silent again, returning to the work with quiet urgency, though Diagus had not admitted his condition was worsening. Both she and Sylvan had noticed that his eyes were no longer returning to their natural color. They discussed it earlier when Diagus had slipped out to fetch Chloe some tea, and knew what it meant. Alright, I'm going to finish to chapter 24 and then I'll stop. They took a brief break when Nell had brought the midday meal into the chamber. Shortly after Nell had cleared the dishes away, Diagus straightened abruptly in his chair. Oh, it's his about blither and time. Chloe's heart began to pound. What? What did you find? Oi, speak. Lad, what is it? Diagus scanned the page for a moment, translating silently. 'Tis about the Tuatha Day. It tells what happened when the 13 were... Trailing off, reading to himself. Read aloud, Sylvan growled. Diagus raised his gaze from the 5th book of Manon. Aye, but give me a moment. Chloe and Sylvan waited breathlessly. Diagus scanned the page and flipped to the next. All right, he said finally. The scribe tells that in the early days of Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann came to the isle, descending in a mist so thick it dimmed the rising of the 3 suns. They were possessed of many and great powers. They were not of man's tribe, though they had similar form, tall, slender, entrancing to gaze upon. To describe the scribe describes them as shining with imperial radiance. They were graceful, artistic people who claimed to be seeking no more than a place to live in peace. Mankind proclaimed them gods and tried to worship them as such, but the rulers of the Tuatha Dé forbade such practice. They settled among man, sharing their knowledge and artistry, and so ensued a golden age unlike any before. Learning attained new heights, languages became a thing of the past, and power and beauty, song and poetry developed the power to heal. That much is similar to the myths, Chloe marked when he paused. Aye, Digus agreed. As both races seemed to prosper by the union, in time the Tuatha Dé selected to train the mortals as druids, as lawgivers, lore-keepers, bards, seers, and adversaries to the mortal kings. They gifted those druids with knowledge of the stars and of the universe, of the sacred mathematics, laws that govern nature, even inducting them into the certain mysteries of time itself. But as time passed, and the druids watched their overworldly companions ever sickened or aging, envy took root within their mortal hearts. It festered and grew, until one day 13 of the most powerful druids presented a list of demands to the Tuatha Dé, including among them the secret to their longevity. They were told that man was not ready to possess such things. Rubbing his jaw, Digus fell silent, translating ahead. Just when Chloe felt like screaming, he began again. The Tuatha Dé decided that they could no longer remain among mankind. That very eve they vanished. 'Tis said that for 3 days that they left. The sun was eclipsed by dark clouds, the ocean lay still upon the shores, and all the fruit of the land withered on the limb. In their fury, the 13 druids turned to the teachings of the ancient forbidden god, whose one's name's best forgotten, hence not scribed herein. The god to whom the druids supplicated themselves was the forbidden god, spawned in the earliest myths of Gaia, calling upon the darkest powers, armed with the knowledge of the Tuatha Dé had given them. The druids attempted to follow the immortal ones, to seize their lore, and steal the secret of the eternal life. So they really were immortal? Are immortal? She breathed. 'Twould seem so, lass. He skimmed the text again. Give me a moment. There are no comparable words for some of this. Another long pause. I think this is the gist of it. That the 13 did not know is that the realms, I can't think of a better word, within realms are impenetrable by force. Such travel therein is a delicate process of sifting or straining time and place. In their attempt to brutalize or coerce the path between the realms, the 13 druids nearly tore them well asunder. The Tuatha Dé, sensing the distress in the weaving of the world, returned to avert catastrophe. The Tuatha Dé's fury was immense. They scattered their once friends, now bitter enemies, to the far corners of the earth. They punished the evil ones and the druids who had been chosen greed over honor. Who loved power more than they valued the sanctity of life, not by killing them, but by locking them into place between realms, giving them the immortality for which they lusted. Eternity is nonetheless without form, without cease. By American, would that not be hell? Sylvan breathed. Chloe nodded with eyes wide. Digus made a choking noise. Oh, So that's who the Dragar are. Who? He frowned. The scribe tells of even before the disagreement with the Tuatha Dé, the 13 druids had formed a separate, secret sect within the larger numbers of their brethren, for their own talisman and name. Their symbol was a winged serpent, and they called themselves the Dragar. That would suck. Daniel, that would really suck. Aww, that would be so sad too. Anyway. It was Chloe's turn to make a strangled sound. A winged serpent? Digus glanced at her. Oi, does that mean something to you, lass? Digus, that man who attacked me in your penthouse, didn't you see his tattoo? He shook his head. I saw it, but I didn't get a good look at it. I do not ken what it was. It was a winged serpent. I saw it up close when he was on top of me in the kitchen. Blither in hell. It makes sense now. He leapt to his feet so abruptly that the book of Monononon tumbled to the floor. But, he trailed off, how could that be? He muttered, looking baffled. Chloe was about to ask what made sense and how what could be when Sylvan Rose retrieved fallen tomb. While Diagus paced, muttered beneath his breath, Sylvan continued reading where Diagus had left off. 'Tis said that some time after the Druids were scattered, that the 13 locked away in their prison, a small band of whom survived regrouped in an effort to reclaim their lost lore. Oh, listen to this. An order arose, founded upon the divination of a seer who claimed the Dragar, who would one day, far in the future, return and proclaim the powers of the Tuatha Dé had stolen from them. Apparently, this seer wrote a detailed prophecy describing the circumstances under which the Ancient Ones would return, and the Druid sect of the Dragar formed to watch and await such events that would signify the prophecy's fruition. He broke off abruptly, read a few moments in silence, and then flipped the page. Then he scanned through the final few remaining sheaves. That's it. 'Tis all that was written about, he cursed, and skimming the subsequent pages. Then he snapped the tomb shut and placed it aside. Chloe's mind was whirling as she watched Diagus pace. She and Sylvan exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Diagus stopped pacing and looking at his father. Well, that seals it. Chloe and I must return to her century. Do not be hasty, lad. We need to reflect on this. Nay, Dad. 'Tis evident that the man who attacked Chloe was a member of the Dragar sect. Their prophecy must have guided them to me. From what we just read, 'tis apparent they do not have the power of the stones, so they can't come out through time after me. I do not know how to find the sect in this century, but in hers, they know where I am. You want them to find... No. You want them to find you, Sylvan exclaimed. Why? Who else might possess the most detailed information on these beings that inhabited me than the Druid order who had preserved their prophecy all these millennia? He cast a sweeping glance around the contents of the chamber. We could waste many moons searching here to no avail. And well, let's just say I have a feeling my time is swift being exhausted. Chloe drew a deep, fortifying breath. I think he's right, Sylvan. The Kelter have all this lore about the Kelter. It's logical to assume that the Dragar have equally large collection of works about the Dragar. Besides, you can continue searching here and pass it forward to us if you find something. If I understand this time travel stuff correctly, Anything you find would be waiting for us when we get back. I do not like this, Sylvan said stiffly. Duh. Even if we not uncovered this information today, I wouldn't have been able to remain much longer, and you know it. In case you've not noticed my eyes. We've noticed, Chloe and Sylvan said together. Then, Digus said firmly, you know I've right of it. If not else, I must get Chloe back to her time before it's too risky for me to use the magic to open the White Bridge again. We must go back, and best we do it so without delay. They spent their final night in the 16th century over leisurely dinner in the Great Hall, then passed the remainder of the gloaming on the terrace. Chloe sat on the cobbled stones with Sylvan and Nell, and watched Digus playing with his young half-brothers, chasing them around the lawn beneath the crimson-streaked sunset. It was hard to believe that they were going back again, Chloe thought, savoring a soft hooting of owls and hum of crickets. She'd missed such peaceful sounds when she left Kansas, and had thoroughly been enjoying falling asleep each night to such sweet music in the strong arms of her Highlander. It occurred to her that though she had been in the past for weeks, she'd scarcely gotten to see much of it, other than the castle and one dusty chamber. She'd so wanted to return to the village of Bolinok and explore more, and if she had enough time would have begged to go to Edinburgh to really get a good look of the medieval life. She especially rued having to leave Sylvan and Nell, knowing she'd never see them again, except in portraits on Maggie's castle walls. But she understood his insistence that they return immediately, and knew that even if he'd been willing to stay, she wouldn't have been able to enjoy it, until they found what they needed to do to save him. She doubted that she might enjoy anything. "You will take care of him, won't you?" Nell said softly. Chloe glanced over to find both she and Sylvan watching her intently. She smiled. "I love him. I'll be at his side every step of the way," she vowed firmly. "Do not be getting yourself all in a fankle, Sylvan," she added in a teasing lilt, hoping to lighten his somber expression. "I'll take care of your son, I promise." Her gaze skimmed back to Digus. He was carrying Robert while chasing Ian, and both were squealing with delightful laughter. His dark hair was loose, and his chiseled face fairly blazed with love. "Believe me, if I have anything to do with it," she said, adding fervently, "I'll be putting my own babies in that man's arms." Nell laughed delightedly. "Now there's a fine lass," she chuckled approvingly. Sylvan heartily concurred. It's 10 days, but damn it. It's how many centuries? I'm just saying. Chapter 24. Not tonight. Not tonight, dear. Not tonight. So close, though. For real, for real. Oh, tomorrow night. It's official. I'm glad for it, too, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, I will not have 10 p.m.s. Just so you know. So tomorrow night. That's it. Better be over. I probably bored y'all to death at this point. So that's how COVID got here. Y'all don't understand. Damn it, Chloe. It's all your fault. I'm telling you, Daniel, you need to write your own damn books, man, for real. I'm very intrigued by you. I like your writing. You're very welcome, dear. I'm going to gain like 50 pounds just eating cheese. I swear to God. So, yeah. I got 2 minutes left. I'm so ready to go to sleep, for real. So what do you guys think is going to happen? I have a feeling that he's not going to be able to go back to the future. Something's going to happen that's going to tear them apart. When you get plugged up by the cheese, give me a call. I got a thumb that can help. No, what I'll probably do to counteract this is drink the rest of that apple cider. I'll be in the bathroom for like 3 days. Hey, Larry. How are you doing tonight? Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to that point, like, where you haven't had any kind of attention or affection, that you just easily accept anything? I think it's called desperate. But either way. Like anything, even if it goes beyond your standards, like, fuck it. She ain't got no teeth. She ain't gonna bite me. Like... Sorry for those of you who just joined. That's all I'm going to say. Just sorry. No excuses. Just sorry. Oh, yeah, I have. My daughter was talking about some dude today, and I was like, first of all, tell him to pull his fucking pants up. His pants down around underneath his ass. I'm sorry, honey. To me, that symbolizes that you're available for other men. That's not a turn on for me. What did the one-eyed whore say to the John as he left her room? I'll keep an eye out for you. Silly. I swear, this generation is so fucking stupid. And that's where, like, I know for a fact that I'm old. I'm that grumpy old lady sitting in the front yard. You're fucking stupid. Get off my lawn. Anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed that bit of ridiculousness, but tomorrow night, it's official. We would have finished it tonight if I hadn't bullshitted around the other day. And yep, I'm going to celebrate tomorrow night too. Reading my second full book since 6th grade. I know it doesn't seem like much to most, but to me it means a whole shit ton. I'm excited to get to a third. If y'all know of any books that you want me to read, let me know. Well, the post that you had, the mind wants love, the soul wants peace, the body wants sex, and the stomach wants tacos. To be honest, choosing 3 out of 4 might work in certain circumstances. I'll, at the very least, take love, soul, peace. Wait, yeah. Love, peace, and tacos. Especially if they're street tacos. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't you know? Those street tacos, yeah. Peace, love, and tacos. There's my merch. There we go. Hold on. Peace, love, and tacos. Merch. Bam. That and an itchy bra. Lord. I don't know what it is about this spot right here. It's like really super itchy. I don't know why. I'm probably going to end up eating this entire vegetable tray tonight. At least I'm eating something healthier, right? It's so hard to eat when you get a molars. I'm getting my molar gums ready for when I don't have any teeth. You know those people that don't have no teeth, but they still eat steak and shit? Oh, there's a big pimple right there. I didn't see that. I identify all my flaws up front, so this way it just gets it all out of the way. I don't have to worry about nothing. Guys. Celery. What if they're like fighting and throwing tacos at each other? Then it'd be like a food fight. Like a sex food fight. That'd be weird. I don't know, that'd be kind of kinky too at the same time. I don't know, it's kind of weird. But yeah. Celery. Trust me, it helps. It also helps with you being able to rest in the evening. If you eat celery before you go to bed, it actually like releases some kind of chemical in your brain that helps you sleep better. But for guys, I heard that it helps with semen production. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's true or not. That's a new one that you haven't heard? I heard it on Lackadaisical's stream. He was talking about it one day. Mad Lackadaisical, you quit my fucking OF subscription, you ass. Mad at you. He's been supporting me all year. I prefer the good, vigorous ball massage each night theory. That's a good theory. But all right, my loves. I have to call it quits for tonight. I have a call that I have to do, so I will talk to y'all tomorrow evening, and we will finish this book real quick, and then we'll bullshit the rest of the time, probably. So, yep, get your whiskey ready for tomorrow night. We're going to finish this book. I'm excited. I bet you there's going to be a huge twist, and it's going to end up being really fucking sad, because the first one was like, she got her man back. I have a feeling that she won't get Dagus back. Or maybe she'll turn into the 13 ghosts. Who knows? Second book, yep. I'm excited. I'm really waiting for the third. I'm probably going to end up being this person that has a huge library of books. I cannot wait to go to Biltmore Sunday. I can't wait. Oh my God. The size of the libraries in this freaking mansion are exponential. And I could just imagine if I could walk in there and had the time to enjoy it fully, to just smell the books. Each book, page, ink, glue, binding, has its own specific and unique scent, plus the fact of the age of the book. It was the Candlelit Christmas Dinner Tour and the Van Gogh exhibit. He paid for the tickets, and I'm going to pay for dinner. Which, speaking of which, oh shit, y'all need to remind me. Danielson, I have a job for you. On the morrow, I need you to remind my wee mind about getting the dinner tickets. He? Who is he? John. John is a family friend who has been here with me from the very beginning. Very good friend of ours. Getting the dinner tickets. Yeah. You need to be reminding me to be getting the dinner tickets. Yeah. Because if not, I'm going to be screwed, and we're going to be eating fucking bologna sandwiches. So, family friend, he's single? Yep. Yep. And so is his son. No worries there, trust me. He already knows that it's not going to go any further than it is. Already stated it. Mm-hmm. In a sense, yeah. I have my reasons. And he's respectful of it. Yep, so we decided to be friends. And he's splitting it half and half with me. He was actually there for my first photo session. Him and his son were the only ones that showed up with the cars for the first photo session. He's actually a very respectful gentleman, believe it or not. Fair enough, a handy J on a stairwell would be a nice Christmas gift. And that we would get kicked out of Biltmore, like, immediately. Just saying. No. We're legitimately friends. I have male friends that they know for a fact that there's nothing going to happen between the two of us. So. And like I said, I have my reasons, and he's respectful of that, so. Keep getting asked, are you spending the night? No, we're driving back. Yes, a male and a female can be friends without having sex. Handy J's are a way of reinforcing the bond of friendship. That's why I'm paying for dinner. Duh. Anyway. Even if I have to bring bologna sandwiches, that's what I might do. I might just bring bologna sandwiches and we'll eat them in the car on the way there. I said that if we went to Biltmore, I actually invited him to go. And then he ended up reversing it on me. So there. To that. And I said, okay, well, if you pay for the tickets, then I'm paying for dinner because I want to eat like a fucking queen. I want to feel like a goddamn queen walking around this bitch. I have my dress already ready. I bought jewelry. I've got my heels ready, which are probably going to be killing me by the end of the night. I'm going to bring my flats with me just in case. But we're going to be walking around the grounds all day. Then we're going to have the Van Gogh exhibit. And then we're going to have the Christmas candlelit dinner tour. And then we're going to have the dinner. And then we're going to have to drive all the way the fuck back. Exhausted, full. Freaking just done for the day. I do need to find out legitimately, though, like, what is the requirements for photography. And if I can go live, because I kind of really want to go live while I'm there. Even if it's for a minute. Just, like, quick span. I don't even think you're allowed to bring your phones in. I don't know. They say to leave everything in your car and, like, lock your car. Hell, the hotel is bigger than the freaking castle. I call it a castle. It's an estate. But either way. Anyway, I've talked about this for like a month and a half, 2 months now. He is. He actually is a really respectable gentleman. Sometimes people build the perfect mate by combining multiple people in their lives together in some form of weird pseudo-polyamorous platonic thing. I tell you, if dude will go to Biltmore with you, he would happily accept more. Chuck him a handy J to give him something to get through to 2022. Anyway, on that note, it is now 12:19. I've actually gone to a bunch of places with people before. This has kind of triggered me, sorry. How has it triggered you? We're friends. That's what it's supposed to be. I've had a male friend since kindergarten that I chased around the parking lot trying to kiss. We kissed at one point, but like it was weird. So even he agreed it was kind of weird. Yeah, I tried to kiss him, and then like after high school, we ended up kissing one time, and then it was like I don't know, it was weird. And then so we just continued being friends, and he's married and has kids now. Like, we're still friends. And I'm almost 40. Oh, that was in elementary school. Like, we never had sex. I mean, I kind of wish we had, but I'm just saying. He would have been my first if we did have sex. He would have been my first. But yeah, I've had friends that I never had sex with that are males. I had coworkers and shit too that were males that I was friends with that I never had sex with them. I mean, whether or not they wanted to have sex with me or not, I don't know, because nobody ever fucking tells me. I'm sorry that it triggered you. I do have a warning on my page that says I have all trigger warnings. So, I'm sorry that you got triggered, hon. See, I told you I should have left earlier. Damn it. No, I'm sad. We're friends. Yeah. Some people fall in love and never fall. Hold on. Some people fall in love and never fall out of love for that person. Never. And will accept whatever they can get. It is torture to them even as they have the pleasure of your company. Fantasies override their dreams. Been there, done that, got the shirt. I'm experiencing that situation right now myself. So I don't understand, like, why are you triggered? Because I've explained that myself, like, in the past 2 weeks. I know for a fact that the man that I fell in love with, I'm never going to be with. And, like, we're okay. Like, he's talking to some other girl. And I'm talking to him through it. Like, I'm never going to be with him. Ever. And I accept that now. No, it doesn't mean I'm not going to love him. Like, in my own weird, like, way. But you can love anyone. You can love any person at any point in time. That doesn't mean that, you know, that you're going to be with them. It's okay. It's just the fact of experiencing the love. Give the dude a handy J. Anyways, it's 12:22 in the morning. Make a wish, and until then, till I get to see you guys again. I'm sorry that it triggered you. I should have left earlier. I apologize. Sorry, triggered. Didn't see those comments coming. I'm not sure what you mean, hun, but I'm sorry that you got triggered. I'm sorry that whatever I said was upsetting you. You never know what the future holds. Ever. So don't give up. Don't give up. None of us know what the future holds. Until then, till the future is here, I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. And I hope that until then, that you behave. Have a good night.